and I think it's the way that a lot of angel investing starts, which is you're at a point in your career where you have made a bunch of money that you don't know what to do with, and it's otherwise going into savings or to charity or whatever to your family. And then someone with whom you have worked comes to you and says, "Hey, remember me? I'm Joe."
This is another episode of Form Your Own Pack podcast. My guest today is JJ Kasper from Blue Collective. JJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
All right, so for people that don't know, who is JJ Kasper?
That's a question.
That is the first question.
I'm an investor at Blue Collective. We do all early stage venture capital investing, based in Brooklyn, New York. I live here, work here. I'm in the office right now, and longtime resident of New York, but grew up Maryland, Virginia, and done a bunch of different stuff in my life before being a professional investor. Run businesses and advised businesses, been a lawyer, been an academic, been a teacher, a bunch of different stuff.
Awesome. So how did you get started in, I guess, investing first off?
As a professional investor, the story is not the typical one. I started Blue because one of my very close best friends said, "Do you want to do something together?" Like business-wise.
That's all right.
So the genesis for this was more so a guy I am close personal friends with, and also one of my few friends where he and I actually work well together too. Just wanted to do something with him. So it kind of came out of that. I would tell you though, was it a complete break with the past? I'd been doing angel investing before that, but I wasn't, it was nothing disciplined. It was opportunistic. And I tell you though, the way that started, which is somewhat relevant to what we do, is, and I think it's the way that a lot of angel investing starts, which is you're at a point in your career where you have made a bunch of money that you don't know what to do with, and it's otherwise going into savings or to charity or whatever to your family. And then someone with whom you have worked comes to you and says, "Hey, remember me? I'm Joe, and I'm doing this company.
Right.
Will you give me some money?" And if you think Joe, if you think back and you go, "Oh my God, I do remember Joe," and if your memory is that he was competent and trustworthy and so on and so forth, you say, "All right, Joe, let me give you whatever it is, right? 25K or something." So that's how I got started investing as an angel investor. Although it's not, in some ways, it's not too dissimilar to what we do now as professional investors, but I can sort of tease that out later.
So what type of thesis do you have? Like, or, what's the basis that you will look for or invest in companies?
Zero thesis.
Okay. It's like whatever feels right.
Whatever feels right.
Shake the dice and see what the numbers
we make up. No, zero thesis. If you define thesis in the way that 99% of VCs define thesis, meaning we do not start with a prediction about the future. E.g., there will be no office buildings in the future. We don't do that. We don't start with a prediction about a specific industry or category that's going to be super hot 10 years from now. The things that are constant for what we do is it's only early stage and truly early stage. We're probably different than a lot of VCs too, in that when we say early stage, we really mean it. We invest, 2/3 of our investments happen at pre-seed or earlier. So early stage, that's one thing that's got to be true. The sooner the better. Second thing, it's got to be true. The idea's got to be big enough. And there's some softness around that, but it's got to be big enough, bigger than a breadbasket, I suppose. And then third, it's got to have great founders attached. So our model, and when I say we have no thesis, I'm sort of overstating in that our thesis is really great people build really awesome companies, period.
I love it.
And because we invest so early, as I said, 2/3 are pre-seed. Probably 80% of the companies we invest in are pre-revenue, right? So you don't have much to go on other than it's two people, a pitch deck, maybe a dog, right? Like that. That's kind of it.
Hopefully the dog is related to the business. But
yeah, dog is a big plus.
Although it tells you a lot about the person, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, that they're a great person.
So what type of dog do you have, JJ?
I've got two mutts. They're both the same type of mutt though. They are a mix of Shih Tzu and Maltese.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they look like little Ewoks.
Little Ewoks. Well, we always like any Star Wars reference, so that's always good.
Yeah.
So when you say great founders, what do you typically like? What is a great founder to you?
That is the perpetual question that we're trying to sort out. And I would tell you at this point, I think we can probably articulate like half of it, and then the other half, I still don't know if we can yet. Our game is to try to articulate more and more of it. But I'd say this: look, on one level, it is all the stuff you hear from everyone, right? Like meaning, certain level of intelligence, certain level of people skills, grit, resilience. These are all true, right? Like you do have to have these. I would say there's some nuance around what type of intelligence and what type of people leadership skills and so on and so forth. So I'd say one bit of what we do is we have a unique way that we assess that. But we are assessing kind of the common set of attributes I think a lot of people would refer to, and we agree with that. Like, these are real. You have to be resilient as an entrepreneur because at the end of the day, it sucks. So if you're not resilient, you're not going to get out of bed every morning, right? So these are all true. I'd say though there are some things that are specific to us that we look for, and some of these have a time and place. Like for specific, some of these are tied to specific categories. But to give you an example of this, and this I would say is tied generally, although maybe most important in consumer businesses, although our best founders, even in pure software or enterprise SaaS businesses, have this same quality, which is the following. This is going to sound super unsexy. From day one, the entrepreneur has the makings of a great CEO. They also have the better than average skill sets of a CFO.
Okay.
They are very thoughtful about the financing strategy. Yeah, we can talk about that. Like CEO, depending on category.
Yeah.
CEO might need to have a product leaning. Some other categories you might say they need to have a sales leaning. Depends also on the broader team. But my point is the CEO, like the guy or the gal calling the shots at top, needs to have sort of a CFO mindset. So I'm not saying they need to be like a whiz in Excel, or be able to read through the 3 financial statements. Great. What I'm saying is they are extremely thoughtful from day one about the financing strategy. The financing strategy is not for them is a final piece of the overall business strategy, but it's a really important one. And so examples of this would be our best consumer CEOs, like product companies. Some of these now doing 200 million in annual revenue. They, as quickly as they could, found debt financing, inventory financing, other asset-backed financing, worker capital financing very quickly. And in some cases even said to the VCs, no, I am not taking more VC. I'm going to do exactly what you are telling me not to do, which is I'm going to finance the business with debt. Absolutely 100%. Our very best enterprise SaaS CEOs, as early as they could, access ARR financing.
Wow. Okay.
Often counter to the advice of most of the VCs on the cap table. Now, again, it's not as simple as equity versus debt. There's many different types of debt.
Making sure the thing's liquid no matter what, and they're going to keep rolling.
They are thinking about the future risk reward of the business in a sophisticated adult-like way. Most entrepreneurs only think about the reward side of the business. and it gets fed with a freaking slot machine type mentality by VCs who go more pennies, more pennies, more pennies, take more. Only way to grow. It's not the only way to grow. And the more VC you take, the more risk you attach to the business, and the higher likelihood that this thing is going to zero. Now, that's counterintuitive, because what you will hear often when you talk to VCs, investors, or the average person on the street, should I take debt or equity? They go, oh, debt sounds scary. Ooh, I don't know about that. Don't do debt. Take the equity. Right. So anyway, but I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here. But my point is, our best CEOs, they're very, very thoughtful. Now, look, some of our CEOs of giant, billion-dollar unicorn companies have raised a ton of venture. They're still very thoughtful about this, though, right? They understand the risk attached. They understand the reward. They understand what it means for the next round, right? And the next round, and the next round, and so on and so forth. So that is a characteristic we are looking for. Like, we want to see strategy around financing.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, if you could offer only one piece of advice to founders that you're talking to, what would that be?
Don't raise VC.
Don't
raise VC.
Interesting. Like, at all, ever.
Just if you need it. If your business, if what you're doing, again, I get it. I'm sort of I've got a lot of terms in here. If what you're doing needs VC in order to succeed, then yes, raise VC and understand the risk attached to that and everything else and what it will mean for the business. If you have a good business that doesn't need VC, 99 and to be clear, 99% of small businesses started every year do not raise venture capital. 99% of the 1% of the small businesses every year that raise venture capital go to zero. I usually don't raise VC. Like, I only raise it if you actually need it. So again, sort of that's the question, like, what does it mean to need it? But VC is a scalpel, in the world of finance in terms of like its tool, right? It's a very finely tuned thing that is only to be used in the smallest number of cases, right? And actually has a high risk of cutting the aorta. So only raise VC if you need it.
That's great advice. It's different advice. And actually, have you ever read Rand Fishkin's Lost and Founder? He kind of details his harrowing experience with that type of money. So I think his next venture, he kind of did something more akin to what you're talking about, like friends and family, and then small rounds, and then grew it out.
This is almost this is like the hardest advice to hear, period. Right? Because it's put it this way. If someone is saying to you, I'm going to give you $100 million, I'm going to value this thing that you're doing at like $1 billion, why would you not say yes? Right? Like, it's very hard to convince someone not to say yes, but it actually comes down, there's a first principles way to come at this, which is like, do I actually need to have that amount of capital? Do I need it from these people? Could the business support itself? And it reminds me too, like any of your, look, you hear herring stories on both sides. I wasn't able to raise and sucked. I did raise and sucked, but there was a fellow in our portfolio who said this to me. This was a long time ago, but he said, what I didn't realize, he said, look, everyone says VCs have these crazy expectations about the businesses they invest in, which is true. Like, when I say, and that's why I was saying earlier, one of our criteria is they got to be a big enough idea. It's got to be capable of delivering VC returns, which are completely obnoxiously high, right? Like they're otherworldly. And he said, so when I took it, I knew that's what they were looking for. They want to see 10x growth in the next 2 years and crazy stuff. I knew that, but I also was like, hey, they're only going to own 15% of the company. Like, what, I can't do 10x growth in 2 years. What's that really going to do? And he said, what I didn't realize is the minute I took their money, though, that 10x mentality infected the entire company. There was no way to avoid it. And so the problem is, if you have a business that isn't capable of that type of growth and or doesn't need the capital raise, it, why in the world would you raise venture capital? Just setting yourself up for failure.
Makes total sense to me. All right, if I shift gears for 1 sec, it would be to ask you what sort of role does allies, alliances, or community play in the success of either Blue Collective or founders?
I don't know if I know what the first two words mean, but I'll assume they're all sort of part and parcel of the same thing. I don't know if you meant three specific. I don't know if you meant three distinct concepts, but I understand the word community.
Well, yeah, so that's part of the theme,
Yeah.
just to level set of form your
Right.
own pack, is we say what you said at the beginning, which is entrepreneurship's hard, and you should have people that are close to you, either allies or formal alliances to help you, or build community, or all three.
Yes. So I'll treat it then though like in an unsophisticated way, which is to say, do you need a group of people around you? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it is for my business specifically as a VC investor, it's kind of the whole game. I mean, the job of an investor is to find opportunities, invest in the opportunities, and maybe do something afterwards, right? And so the finding great opportunities only happens, the only way it happens in a great way for any investment strategy is through a bunch of relationships, right? So it's extremely important for us, and it's something we're thinking about all the time, right? And we just call it relationship building, right? Like,
right,
because ideally to make your life happy too, you don't have and maybe this is just me personally, but ideally also it's like you'd like there to be you'd like coincident your friends outside of work and your friends in work, right? Like, meaning having those separate, I have found in 20 years of working isn't fun. Like, that doesn't give me any enjoyment. I
work
like
with people you like and are
compartmentalize.
friends with. That makes sense.
So for me, it's just all relationship building. It's like,
That's important.
find people that you can be friends with. You help each other just because you're friends, so on and so forth. Anyhow, for an entrepreneur, immensely important too. I think somewhat harder for the entrepreneur though, right? And I think anyone who's been through the CEO gig knows this, right? You end up, it's lonely at top, right? I guess that's the way to put it. And so I think your best gig there is community with other CEOs. Actually, there's no better substitute for that, right? And that really should be what it is. And but also that's hard for what it's worth too, though, right? Because you work a lot, right? And it's hard to make the time. And then it's hard to even give the headspace to listening to some other CEO gripe about X, Y, and Z when you've got your own shit to gripe about. And so it's like actually quite challenging, but that really is the best thing to do. I'd say the no for what it's worth is actually and I've seen this, this goes wrong, is community is sort of the wrong word here, but the trying to get that value from the team doesn't happen and shouldn't happen. I mean, again, you should absolutely be friends with them, celebrate their success, everything else. But it's a little bit like where you see parents go wrong, where the daughter, the 18-year-old daughter is like, yeah, my mom's my best friend. And you're like, oh, no. Like, that's not, they're the parent. That's the kid. Got to be the same thing with the CEO. And it's actually somewhat similar though with your investors, right? Like you should be friends with them. You should get to know them personally, all that sort of stuff. Like all of that is true. And actually with your best investors, you might share your deepest and darkest fears. The reality though is a lot of those investors aren't going to have had the same experience as you as a CEO otherwise, and they're not going to be able to give you the right advice in that moment. They'd be good listeners. That's a plus. But if you really want someone who can listen, give you right advice, some decent steer, it's got to be other people at that level.
That makes sense. All right. Yeah. What is either one industry or company that you're excited about right now?
Industry. Bunch of companies I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's good.
Bunch of companies, but that might be less exciting because then it'll just feel like I'm tooting my own horn. But a bunch of companies I'm excited about. Category-wise, I don't know right now. I would tell you I don't mean to dodge your question here, but it's as I said, we're not category-driven investors. As a personal matter, also, I'm not really a category guy. I have I'm not that old, but I'm in my 40s now. I have worked in every industry from apparel to mining to enterprise SaaS to consumer SaaS to old school AI. I've worked in an artificial insemination business. I've done farming. I've done a broad range of stuff. Auto dealerships. I've seen a bunch, and none of them excite me. Like I was sort of having had a career where I got exposure to all this. I ended up in this spot where I was like, it's all the same stuff. Like there's no, the problems are this, and maybe I'm the idiot who's generalizing too much, which is almost certainly partly true or maybe majorly true, but it's like none of them excite me. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you there. I would
Really,
tell
there's
you,
no sector that is, it's interesting. I think what I observe, for example, like we've been talking to a lot of Y Combinator founders, and normally those were like, hey, it's 90 days, we're going to bang out an app. And I think that was for a really long time. They're either building software or an app, right? And what I'm seeing is there's like neurobiology or
no,
or
actually, here, I'll tell you what gets me,
like, what are you
I'll
gonna
tell
do
you
for
what gets
90
me
days? And
excited.
they're doing
No, I'll tell you what gets me excited. I mean, I'll give you look, because you're asking, I'll force myself to give you an answer. Number one, here's some categories that I'm finding extremely not interesting, which we are seeing a ton of right now, and I don't really get it. We're continuing to see stuff around NFTs. I don't want to be the one to
Really?
pronounce this as the end of it, but yeah, that I think if you're working on that as a founder, take a deep look in the mirror, ask yourself some hard questions, and maybe devote those talents and energies to something else at the moment.
Okay.
Number two, I would say we don't do a lot of this, but we've done some. I don't know a lot about this, but I have this sense that innovation in, I'm not an expert here, just to be clear. So this is maybe clear. I have this sense that innovation in the medical space, med devices, biotech, and even sort of the analytics and technology around that stuff, like diagnostics, treatment, et cetera, is going to be, I think that's the next 10 years in part. I'm not saying this because I've read anything that says that. I'm not saying this because I've got any insider knowledge. I'm saying this because we are seeing a proliferation of more interesting things there in our own deal flow over the last year or so. And I'm sensing a lot of the dynamics are changing in that world, but I'm not smart enough to comment on more than that. But we're interested in that sort of stuff, even though I know it's harder. And I'll tell you this, here's my final comment. My third comment is, yeah, like what gets me excited about the job I do, though, is not the category. It is actually the people we meet. Like 99% of the people we meet are passionate about what they're doing, and that is good and infectious, and we like it. And even if it's not that idea we're going to invest in, which 99% of the things we meet, folks we meet with, we do not invest in, it's still fun to chat with them. And it's, you make a friend or start of a friendship. It's great. I would tell you also, though, what gets me excited is the problem part of it too, though. I think a lot of entrepreneurs often skip over this a little bit, meaning what is the problem you're solving, and whose problem is it, and how deep or severe is it really, right? And that's actually interesting. And so when you meet someone who is, and I'll tell you what's more interesting is someone who is articulating in a new way a problem versus someone that just is referring to the same old problem, but they have a better solution. I know that that makes sound pedantic, but what's more exciting is when someone says, no, the actual problem here, it's actually not their problem, it's someone else's. That's how I'm going to solve the overall thing. That's always interesting to us, right? Now, that doesn't always apply to every job. So and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't know what it is, like you're told to put the problem thing in your pitch deck, but I feel like that might be the part that most entrepreneurs sort of write in. They're like, yeah, fuck, that's easy. Like, write the page, on to the next thing. Yeah. That to us, it really is the core of this. And a lot of our questions too, it's funny, like a lot of our questions in the first meeting that we'll have an entrepreneur will actually be around that, right? Meaning like, and again, because entrepreneurs will skip over it. They want to get into traction, this, and that. I want to talk problem. Is it really a problem? Yeah.
Well, I think that people skip it over. I think you just hit it on the head, right? So I think that's really interesting you say that. To me, that's first principles. And I think we encourage, in kind of our startup and grow methodology, we say, like, what's the problem in the world? Go really define it. Yeah. Rapidly prototype, and then go talk and try to get some nominal money from those customers before you go crazy. Like,
right.
Is this a real thing?
And the reason why it's important is, look, because it basically sets the stage for all of it, right? Like, meaning, of course, it sets the stage for the solution. It sets the stage for the business model. But what it also sets the stage for, which again, I think the best entrepreneurs get, is that is the thing in part that is getting you out of the bed every morning, right? So a lot of times too, where it's like a problem that just feels ticky-tack. It's like, we see this all the time too. And I don't, if anyone pitched this recently, don't take this as an offense, right? But it's like when people say, I'm doing a new dating app, the problem is Tinder leads to too many hookups. It's like, okay, maybe definitionally true, but is that really? If you put yourself 5 years out from today, are you really going to be getting up every morning at 5 a.m., get out of bed because you want to decrease the number of hookups in the world? Like, that's the thing. I don't know.
I have a name for that app, but I don't think it's appropriate.
Like maybe it is like but like to me that's a question I'm asking too, because you've got to be solving a problem. That's why I'm saying it actually, yes, it sets the stage for all the stuff in the pitch, but it sets the stage for you as a human being. I remember one of my first angel investments was in this company called Sir Kensington's. It's a ketchup company, ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise.
Oh,
Okay. Great ketchup. Yeah, great ketchup, great mustard. Guys who started it, super smart, awesome entrepreneurs. I remember though, and Mark and Scott are friends of mine, but Mark was a friend of mine preceding Sir Kensington's for quite a while. And I remember Mark, and he was one of the guys I invested in too, came to me and said, "Hey, I'm starting this thing." I remember Mark saying to me like 4 or 5 years in, he's like, I realized pretty quickly that if doing a ketchup company, if I am not thinking about ketchup and worrying about ketchup 24 hours a day, I couldn't do this.
That makes total sense to me.
Now, you could say, "Oh my God, who is the guy who thinks about ketchup all the time?"
Why someone that's selling a lot of ketchup?
And again, maybe to counter what I said earlier, maybe there is the guy who goes, "I want to decrease the number of hookups," and we're like, "Okay, fine, right?" But
anyway, so like someone that's gonna be the party guy, but yeah, maybe maybe a billion people will jump on that app. I don't know.
Look, it's a fine. I'm giving it a negative spin. It might be.
It sounds like somebody specific.
Marriages and birth rates and this and that, right? But you could again, you talk yourself into it. But that's why I'm saying actually, and so much the problem. There's the substance of it, but the articulation matters because it actually says to us how that person is thinking about the problem, right? It's not a throwaway thing. It's not a nice to have. It's a need to have. This is the solution is a need to have because the problem fucking sucks, right? Whatever the problem is.
That makes sense. Well, I've taken a bunch of your time, so I want to be conscious of that. I'm going to wrap with 2 quick things. First of all, thank you, JJ. I want to acknowledge you for spending so much time with me and for your insight onto how you work. How do people get in touch with you?
Email. Just email me.
Okay.
jjkasper@bluecollective.com. It's on the website too.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll include that.
Cold emails are encouraged. That's
okay.
Our job is to meet with entrepreneurs.
Wonderful.
That's our job. Yes, yeah, that's why investors give us money. Yep, and that
makes sense.
So that's what we do. So please email us.
All right. So the final thing is when we have interesting investors or entrepreneurs on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting investors or entrepreneurs. So who would you, JJ, like to nominate as a future guest of the Form Your Own Pack podcast?
I don't know. I could think of people. I'm not sure. I mean, I maybe have too many. I don't know what would be most helpful to you, Michael.
We talk to either investors or entrepreneurs that are starting scalable startups and that are just interesting people.
I will send you a list. I have a handful of entrepreneurs.
All right,
investors.
Everybody's been nominated by JJ. We'll get more specific on the list.
You should. I don't know enough about you might say I've got this real gap. We've never talked with anyone that does.
Okay.
Dating app investing.
No, we don't want dating app investing.
I got the guy for you. I got the guy for you. He's amazing.
This guy
for what it's worth. For what it's worth, I actually do know who I would introduce you to for dating app investing, who has been extremely successful doing it. Okay. And actually is down in Texas. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk to them. JJ, thanks so much.
I don't know if that's what you want, but yeah.
I'll talk to anybody that's interesting, got cool stuff going on. But as long as it's not a dating blocking app, then I don't know if I'm interested in that. Maybe somebody is.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, there's another word for that. But JJ, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks, man. Bye.